I don't know. I might stay kind of close to home today. How close to home, you might ask? This one's a lot. In a quiet ravine outside of my hometown of Bedford, Indiana, there's a tomb, a monolith, really. There's no sidewalk leading to it. There's not a gift shop. I don't even know if I parked in the right spot. There's just a lot of trees, the remainder of a creek, and some slabs of limestone the size of a car with apparently two guys sealed in it. One of them started the industry that helped build most of the buildings that you've probably seen pictures of. The other one drowned in a pond that nobody's even heard of and had to wait 14 years just to get a proper grave. Hi, this is Jeremy. This is Not in the Book. Talking about a guy today that probably nobody outside of Lawrence County has ever heard of. A guy who was basically a one-man renaissance and also eventually a full-blown 19th century soap opera. This little town that I call home is basically here because of him, and I guarantee you that nobody outside Lawrence County probably even knows anything about this, and this story is wild as shit. Most of the stuff that you're about to hear comes from Roger Turpin's miniseries, The Legend of Dr. Foote, over on the YouTube channel Adventures with Roger, which itself is based on the book by Brian Turpen, The Man in the Tomb. So go check both of those out. Adventure with Roger is awesome. Anything and everything about Indiana and just road tripping in general. Go give him some subscribes and love. Okay, let's get into it. To understand Winthrop Foote, you don't really start with Winthrop Foote. God, this is going to be a hard episode if I have to keep saying Winthrop. It's just one of those words my mouth doesn't want to work the right way to get it enunciated. Winthrop was born November 30th, 1787 in Newton, Connecticut, the 10th of 14 kids, born to Edward and Ann Foote. 14 kids, no bathroom, probably zero patients left by kid number 10. His father was a handyman, mechanic, working class through and through, so there really wasn't a lot left over for extras, and this was right after the Revolutionary War ended. The Treaty of Paris was signed in 1783, and there was a wide open sense in this country that if you were smart enough and you were willing to work, the sky was the absolute limit now that British rule wasn't holding anybody back. Winthrop's older brother Ziba, who comes up with this? Who names their kid Ziba? Ziba. Ziba was born in Newton on July 4th in 1783. He was the kid that made the optimism real, reading and doing math at 7 years old, remembering everything that he ever read. Even though the family was poor, Edward Foote scraped together some money for Ziba to get some books specifically, because it was obvious from very early on that kid was just built different. And Ziba didn't just soak all that up for himself. He turned around and read to his little brother Winthrop. By the age of 16, Ziba was already teaching school. First in Newton and Sandy Hook, then White Plains, then New York, then back to Redding, Connecticut, all while saving every dollar that he ever scraped together for college. By the time he actually got to Yale, he had learned so much on his own that he tested out of most of the curriculum pretty early. Started basically as a senior. He graduated in just a year. 22 years old, Ivy League degree, and the whole world in front of him. And Ziba was ready to start a family too. He'd fallen for a woman named Sadie Hunt. She was smart, beautiful. That match where they talked for hours and wrote letters constantly, and by every account, she was perfect for him. A real genuine early 19th century love story. Ziba promised her that once he'd made some money, he'd come back and marry her. And unfortunately, once you start talking about your shrimp business, you're probably not coming back.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Ziba's good friend David Sanford told him about a job opportunity surveying the vast frontier for the government. It paid well, It was adventurous for a smart and ambitious 22-year-old with a fresh degree and a girl. The pay well part probably is what got him. Probably looked like the last big score before settling down. So Ziba Foote left Connecticut, left Sadie behind, and went 900 miles into a swamp. Most of the Indiana wilderness in 1806 wasn't the Indiana you'd recognize today. It was wetlands, it was marshes, standing water, clouds of mosquitoes that you couldn't walk through, and diseases like typhoid fever and malaria. If you were looking for a place to go die, Frontier, Indiana is 100% where it's at. David Sanford, the friend who talked Ziba into this whole surveying trip, caught a fever out there. Ziba nursed him as best as he could, but Sanford died anyways. Then Ziba caught it too. He almost died. He recovered, and instead of doing the smart thing, because book learning only gets you so far, he kept going west with 2 other guys. By this point, he was over 900 miles away from home, deep in the dark, uncharted wilderness of Indiana. And on Wednesday, April 30th, 1806, Ziba and his 2 companions were trying to survey a pond in what's now known as Gibson County, Indiana. As Ziba crossed it, he lost his footing. The heavy surveying equipment he had strapped to him, the same tools that made his job possible, pulled him straight to the bottom. His 2 companions tried everything. They pulled him up out of the water a couple of times, lost their grip, and had to go back down for him again.
A few moments later.
2 hours of pulling a man up out of a pond over and over again. Typically doesn't work out if you're trying to stay breathing. Regardless, they finally got his lifeless body onto the bank. By then, yeah, it was already over. They buried him right there at the pond's edge. What else you gonna do? They wrapped him up in a crude coffin made of hickory bark because, what else you gonna do? You had to work with what you had to work with. It's 1806. It's the frontier, known as Indiana. Yeah. But the place has been known as Foote's Grave Pond ever since, and it still carries that name today, more than 200 years later. Back in Connecticut, the information finally got to everybody, absolutely devastated everyone who loved him. His parents, who had sacrificed to get him the education in the first place. Sadie Hunt, who'd been patiently waiting on him to come home so they could get hitched and start shooting kids out. And above all, his little brother Winthrop, who, by every account, had looked up to Ziba more than anyone else in his entire life. Winthrop made a vow. Someday he's going to go to this plot of land known as Indiana. He would retrieve his brother's body, and he would give him a proper burial that he deserved. He was going to do it with the honor that Winthrop believed that Ziba deserved. That promise, that vow that Winthrop made to himself would haunt him in both ways, good and genuinely dark, for the rest of his life, all the way to his grave. I was going to hang out at the tomb, but Indiana's got 3 things. It's got unpredictable weather, limestone, and bugs. And the mosquitoes down there were absolutely hellacious. No thanks. I'm good. We'll get to malaria in a minute. Winthrop followed his brother's footsteps really in the only way he could, through education, as a way out of the poverty that they had grown up in. He studied law at Columbia University, took specialized medical training at the College of Physicians and Surgeons, interned at New York Hospital, and received his medical certificate in February of 1818. So with all his book learning and everything, Winthrop Foote could have set up a lucrative law or medical practice in one of the biggest cities in America. He could have had wealth, a lavish home, a spot in New York's upper-class society, the whole package that his Ivy League credentials would hand to him. Instead, he chose to travel 845 miles west. He banded together with 2 other doctors, rode west on horseback, treating any settlers that he came across on the way. Miraculous angels riding in from thin air. That's what they were called. It's what people said about him. Pretty dope. By October in 1818, they've reached the Ohio River. They took a boat down to Louisville and continued on horseback from there. One doctor settled at Salem, Indiana, a second up in Bloomington, and Dr. Foote settled at Palestine. He used his horse for house calls, frequently traveling up to 70 miles to see a single patient. He became Lawrence County's first doctor and later took the official title of county physician, charging $1. Medicine, of course, was extra, but $1 per visit. Homie hopped on a horse, rode 70 miles, and charged $1. I'm just saying. He was known as an excellent doctor who genuinely cared for his patients, hence the $1. There's even stories of him swimming across the East Fork of the White River on more than one occasion because word came that somebody was sick on the other side of it, and there wasn't time for him to go around. Understandably, he built a lot of loyal patients and friends, but also a reputation for being eccentric. In 1819, he was admitted to the Indiana bar and later became the county's prosecuting attorney. And honestly, Palestine at the time needed him in that role. And see, we can't think of it today. Okay, this is from my standpoint. I cannot think of that today because all Palestine is a river and farmland. Like, we don't see any of this stuff in here, so it's just wild to know that all of this came from here. I know, like, you have the stuff out west and you think, oh, it's a ghost town or whatever, so I don't know, I'm just having a moment. Anyways, it turns out Palestine, Indiana was a pretty rowdy frontier town. Had a couple of saloons, a 2-story log cabin jail. Having a jail, a sheriff, and a judge, and a prosecuting attorney gave the place a sense of order. But deep inside of Dr. Foote, there was anything but order. There was a brewing, hidden darkness that defied everything that people saw from the outside. By 1820, having settled into his life in Palestine, he figured it was time to keep the promise that he had made 14 years earlier. He took a keelboat west along the White River and then south on the Wabash, passing Mount Carmel, traveling over 100 miles to Gibson County, Indiana, as far as the boat would take him. With the help of a local man named John Waller, he went into the thick Indiana wilderness to search for his brother. After 14 years, Ziba had basically been reduced to bone and just a few scraps of clothing. It was, by Winthrop's own account, a surreal moment. The last time he'd seen his brother was on the Newark, New Jersey bridge, all the way on the East Coast. He never dreamed that that would be the last time that he would see his brother. Winthrop said it himself, that he never thought he'd be compelled to find his brother's last remains in that far-off wilderness. The men packed Ziba's remains into a sack for the boat ride back to Palestine. It was the first and only river voyage the two brothers would ever take. Winthrop buried Ziba on a knoll above town, in a proper but small metal coffin. But as we will see, Ziba's story and the grip that it had on his brother was far from over. With his brother finally laid to rest, Palestine kept moving on. Winthrop had become close with a man named Roger Turpin, a civil engineer who had plotted out the town of Palestine itself. He built a large grain and sawmill, farmed, he ran a card business, and sold goods all the way down to New Orleans by river. When Robert's wife Lena was expecting a baby, her older sister Cynthia Childs Barlow came up from Georgetown, Kentucky to help her out after the birth. And that's how Winthrop met Cynthia. Yeah, bro had a moment. He was joining up on the good squad. He was immediately taken with her charm and intellect. Cynthia came from a prominent, educated Kentucky family, and much like his brothers Ziba and Sadie years earlier, Winthrop and Cynthia developed a deep fondness for each other fast. He found himself thinking about her constantly. This fly is aggravating me. Like bad. Regardless, in the wake of everything his soul had been through, Cynthia was, in his own words, a bright light shining on a not-so-distant hill. She gave him new reason to live. She gave him renewed energy. With that renewed energy, Winthrop threw himself into Palestine's future. If there was a need, he took care of it. As a doctor, he treated the sick. As a prosecuting attorney, he brought order back to this little frontier town, and he took the job seriously enough that when he was assigned an annual salary for it, he wrote, "Rejected." After all that education at Columbia, after passing the bar, after doing all the work that he had already put in, he worked for free because he believed that much in Lawrence County's future. Somewhere around 1824 or 1825, he even took a boat to New Harmony, Indiana to speak to Robert Owen about his utopian community there, apparently trying to figure out what it would take to make Lawrence County a truly great utopia. If you've never been to New Harmony or never heard of New Harmony, Google that. That place is wild too. In August of 1822, a large 2-story courthouse was completed in Palestine, big enough that it doubled as the town's library. And despite holding 2 degrees and being the most educated man in the county, Dr. Foote plastered the entire building himself, by hand. He put in the work. In May 1823, he traveled to Georgetown, Kentucky, and married Cynthia at her family's home. She'd just turned 25 the previous month. He was 35. And the next month, June 1823, he resigned as prosecutor to focus on his new bride and his medical practice. On August 16, 1824, they had their very first child, a son that they named Ziba Hastings Foote in honor of Winthrop's brother. By 1825, Palestine's population had grown to around 600 people, and the town had actually put a bid in to become Indiana's state capital. For real. No joke. Positioned as it was above the White River, Dr. Foote could take real credit for helping to turn that tiny village into a thriving community. And ultimately, in the story of Lawrence County, he was the right man at the right time. But in all things, fate was about to test what kind of man he really was. A massive thunderstorm hit the town, including a savage tornado that tore a path of destruction across Lawrence County. We get it. We understand. It was almost like an omen. Soon after the storm, a mysterious sickness started affecting everyone. Palestine citizens started dropping one by one. Chills and fevers, confining people to bed. People began dying in large numbers, like Palestine legitimately had developed a plague. A once thriving city became a virtual ghost town over the course of a few weeks. Many people in town said that the sickness was a curse brought on when settlers cleared an ancient burial ground to build houses and businesses. For a fact, every time anybody dug anything, human bones turned up. So, probably cursed. Dr. Foote visited the sick constantly, but couldn't pinpoint the root cause of the illness or find a way to treat it. So, a lot of people died. Simple stones were used to mark graves instead of proper tombstones because of the amount. He rode swiftly to both Bloomington and Salem to consult the other 2 doctors who had came with him in the first place. And the 3 of them together concluded that Palestine's position near the slow-moving water and seriously a floodplain, always flooded. The river was breeding the sickness. Dr. Foote met with the county's leadership and gave them his opinion as a physician. Palestine would need to be evacuated or every last person there is going to die. He explained that both Bloomington and Salem sat away from the water and floodlands, slightly elevated above the prairie. And that a new town with those same factors would be a far healthier location. 6 men donated ground, a high prairie 4 miles north of Palestine, and businessman Joseph Rollins, he suggested naming the new town after his boyhood home of Bedford County, Tennessee. The name stuck, making it
Bedford, Indiana. Bedford, Indiana. Bedford, Indiana.
Winthrop used both his medical opinion as a doctor and his legal knowledge as a lawyer to push the move through. Identical lots were traded at no cost at what's now downtown Bedford, and the plan was approved February 9th, 1825. The log buildings of Palestine were taken down, log by log. The grand courthouse was sold to a man named Moses Fell, who dismantled the whole building and hauled it away brick by brick. Before long, almost no trace of Palestine was left. The town that had big dreams of once becoming the state capital was completely gone. Just 7 years. As though it never existed at all. While Dr. Foote couldn't save his own brother, he did save hundreds of people from certain death and became the true hero of Palestine. Modern-day Bedford barely resembles the town that Dr. Foote helped create. There's still hints of the past around here. A lot of the architecture is the same. We've lost some pretty dope-ass buildings, but it is what it is. On 16th and J sits the Moses Fell building. I talked about him a second ago. Moses was a friend of Dr. Foote's and the same guy who bought Palestine's old courthouse and to help fund the rebuilding of Bedford. Back then, Moses had both his house and his business on that corner, and the two men went into business together, selling whiskey under the name Foote and Fell somewhere around January 4th in 1830. The current Lawrence County Courthouse that people picture today wasn't built until 1930, long after Dr. Foote's time. Once the county seat moved from Palestine to Bedford, a temporary log courthouse went up in 1825. Another was built in 1834. The first stately-looking courthouse came along in 1872. Over its history, Lawrence County, my county, Bedford, Indiana, my hometown, has had 6 courthouses total, which is apparently a state record. Dr. Foote never lived to see the grand 1872 building, but you can still find his own house and office at 15th and I Street, diagonally across the square from Moses Fell's place. Today, the Masonic Temple, yes, sits right where his house was. He started with a log cabin in 1826, then built a proper second home in 1830, one that resembled the houses from the place he grew up back in Connecticut, and stood out as pretty unique for the area at the time. The log cabin became his medical office for a while before being sold and moved, and in 1838 he built a formal office next door to the new house. Both stayed in the Foote family for years afterwards. The office eventually became the business of his son, Winthrop Jr., and that was known as Foote and Parker. 1825 itself was a pretty rough year outside of the town-moving drama. Cynthia's father, Thomas Jefferson Barlow, died January 30th. Winthrop's own sister, Olive, died that same year, along with Cynthia's nephew, Thomas Barlow, who had been named after her father. In May of 1825, Winthrop made the long trip home to Connecticut to see his aging parents, possibly to comfort them after Olive's death, knowing full well that 900 miles apart, in those days, any visit could be the last one. But he'd built an entire life for himself in Bedford by then, and that's where he belonged. People needed him there. On December 13th, 1826, Winthrop's mother, Anne Prindle Foote, passed away at 73 years old. Traveling 900 miles to Connecticut in the dead of winter was practically unthinkable in that era, so the life in Bedford continued while Winthrop built his medical practice and his reputation from a distance. Over the next 4 years, Winthrop and Cynthia had 3 more children. Minerva, born October 17, 1827, who would later own the first piano in Lawrence County, of course bought for her by her doting father. And she eventually married General James Winning McKillen, a Civil War hero, and the two of them are buried at Arlington National Cemetery today. Oscar, who was born December 23, 1828, would go on to fight in the Mexican-American War and follow his father into medical practice. And Anne Maria, born July 19, 1830, presumably named after Winthrop's own mother, the household kept growing. When Winthrop's brother Prosper Alonzo, see what I'm talking about with their names? What? Prosper Alonzo Foote. When he died on September 10th, 1831, his 3 kids, Charlotte, John, and Robert, came to live with the family. So yeah, in essence, the house was absolutely packed. By this point, Dr. Foote had truly earned the respect of the entire county. He'd saved the people of Palestine, legally established Bedford, helped bring order to the frontier, and built a successful, prosperous life beyond nearly anyone's standards in Lawrence County. He was, by any measure of the word, on top of the world. That was until Anna Maria contracted measles and died unexpectedly March 5th, 1832. She was only a year old, just months away from her second birthday. And burying his little girl triggered a dark place in his soul. The same kind of theme that ran through his entire life, the loss of control that spiritually sent him right back to that pond where his brother drowned. It created a desperate need for action. It would become the start of both great and terrible things in the years ahead. 9 months after Anne Maria died, on December 15th, 1832, Winthrop Alvin Foote Jr. was born. A new baby and a new start, but there was no real caution in how Winthrop handled his grief. Because, tragedy affects people differently. Some wallow in it, some dive headfirst in whatever diversion that they can come up with, so they can try to stay productive. Winthrop chose the second option on a massive scale. He acquired 3,000 acres across Lawrence and neighboring counties, and he already knew what exactly he wanted to do with it. He traveled to Kentucky, found a man who knew how to cut limestone. Samuel Tobin convinced him to come to Bedford with some pretty big plans, because every great civilization in history involves stonecutters, guys turning solid rock into structures that command respect. And Winthrop believed that the limestone sitting under his own land could possibly build cities that would rival the ancient world. Together, he and Tobin, they opened the Blue Hole Quarry in Bedford, and out of it came buildings of genuinely unbelievable beauty. At first, most of the stone went towards foundations and bridges, practical stuff, the infrastructure stuff that's needed for small, bustling communities. But then it passed on to bigger and more elaborate things, and as requests came in, skilled stonecutters and artisans started moving into Lawrence County to work, and the growing limestone industry, and year over year, the county's reputation grew until Lawrence County was being called the limestone capital of the world. In an era before trains or real roads made the frontier accessible to anyone, Dr. Foote flat out prophesied that someday Indiana limestone would be used as far away as New York. And he was right. And then some. Stone from the industry that he started ended up in the Empire State Building, National Archives, the Pentagon, 25 years, 25 different state capitol buildings, the Biltmore Hotel down in Asheville, North Carolina. If you've never seen that, dope. It's been exported all over the United States and internationally, with a huge amount going to Canada, and even the Vatican has some Indiana limestone in it. Dr. Foote imagined a world that literally nobody else could see, and Lawrence County will forever be in his debt because of it. On March 9th, 1835, his last child, Isis, was born. By then, Winthrop was a middle-aged 47-year-old man who had mostly given up his law career to focus on medicine and mentoring younger physicians in the county. By 1839, he was elected Lawrence County treasurer, and on top of already being a businessman, land speculator, quarry owner, and philanthropist who gave to local charities and churches, his name was pretty much mentioned everywhere. But ultimately, no man is beyond the trials of his life, always just one tragedy away from the end of their happiness. Okay, home stretch. This one's a lot longer than I thought it was, considering that every single thing everyone here knows about Foote's tomb and Dr. Foote. Nobody, maybe a handful of people in this community, know about the crazy shit that this dude did. October 31st, 1850, Halloween night, his son Oscar had been struggling with severe diabetes for years, and he was tired of the fight. So one night he went into his father's office while Winthrop was away and took a lot of the powerful drugs that he had laying around. A man named James Carlton found him on the floor, still alive, and Oscar told him, "I've killed myself and no one can blame me." Dr. Foote was alerted and rushed back home immediately, and nothing he had learned in over 30 years of medical practice could save his son. Oscar died at midnight. He's buried at Green Hill Cemetery. He was only 21 at the time, which happened to be close to the same age Ziba had been when he drowned decades earlier. A lot of people say that the same feelings of losing somebody really brought back a darkness that Dr. Foote had suppressed for years. But this one hit a little bit differently. He started drinking heavily. I mean heavily. On August 24th, 1851, less than a year after Oscar died, his 16-year-old daughter Isis, she contracted typhoid fever and also passed away. And once again, Winthrop was drowning again, just one bottle at a time instead of a pond. By 1852, Dr. Foote's wife Cynthia was granted a divorce. After nearly 30 years of marriage, she'd had enough with the drinking, but the court finally cited adultery as the main reason, naming a woman named Lucinda Shipman, who was 35 years younger than her husband. Painfully, the affair reportedly started just one day after they buried their son Oscar. And whatever kingdom Winthrop Foote had built for himself, it was clearly starting to show cracks and starting to slip off into that sea of despair. On January 31st, 1856, Winthrop Foote married Lucinda Shipman. He was 68, she was 34, literally half his age. The divorce and now this age gap scandalized the community, and his remaining kids couldn't really believe what the hell was going down. On April 8th, 1856, his own son Ziba, named for the uncle that he'd never known, actually filed a lawsuit against his own father, arguing in court that Dr. Foote suffered from habitual and uncontrollable drunkenness and was squandering the family fortune. He was no longer mentally capable of managing his own affairs. As evidence, it had already came out that Dr. Foote had already paid roughly $4,000 for a custom-made casket for himself, which in today's money would be worth over $138,000. That's what I'm saying. It probably wouldn't be that hard to do. And even though Dr. Foote didn't show up to court because he was too ill or too drunk, reports vary, he won his last case anyways. The jury's verdict that Dr. Winthrop Foote is a person of sound mind capable of managing his own estate. He may have won some hearts in the courtroom that day one more time, but at the end of it all, he lost everything. He lost his entire family. And just 6 months after marrying Lucinda on August 2nd, 1856, Dr. Winthrop Alvin Foote passed away. His family paid Lucinda to leave town and disavow any claim to the estate, likely hoping to erase the darkest year and a half of his life and kind of try to preserve the wholesome memory. You know, because history is written by the victors, right? But he genuinely did a lot of good for Lawrence County, which, to be clear, was a lot. Dr. Foote wasn't buried in the family plot at Green Hill Cemetery, the same plot holding Anna Maria, Oscar, Isis, later Cynthia herself, along with their son Winthrop Jr. and his wife. Instead, Dr. Foote had arranged years earlier to be placed in a quiet, lonely spot, short distance from his own Blue Hole quarry. The tomb below the obelisk is actually a massive piece of limestone that fell from a nearby cliff back in 1832. The same year his daughter, Anna Maria, died. Dr. Foote had that master stonecutter, Samuel Tobin, cut it to size and carve a vault out of its center, and it was meant to be for his brother Ziba. Winthrop believed the quiet valleys surrounded by beech trees and the flowing water of the creek was the perfect setting for eternal rest, and he retrieved Ziba's remains from Palestine one more time. It was, by any measure at the time, a tomb fit for a king, and it ended up being a tomb for two. Inside the larger coffin, wrapped in iron, holds Dr. Foote himself. No one is entirely sure why he chose iron, or why he spent that much money on a coffin specifically, but it resembled something for an Egyptian pharaoh. Beside him sits a small container holding what's left of Ziba, reduced to dust after that many years. A rumor started at some point that the small container actually held Winthrop's euthanized dog, Another rumor claimed that his favorite horse, Old Logan, was euthanized and buried with him. But in truth, Old Logan led the funeral procession on the day that Dr. Foote was buried. While other horses were sold off, he lived out his days grazing until he eventually died and was buried somewhere on the nearby hill, not far from his old owner. Since Winthrop had dearly loved his brother, he had it carved on the tomb, and by buried bones of him whom living I loved best, see me at last laid quietly, then leave me to my rest. Dr. Foote would often gather his own children and tell them about their wonderful Uncle Ziba and how intelligent and hardworking he had been, how he had given up half of what he'd learned just so Winthrop could get an education too, becoming both a doctor and a lawyer and escaping the poverty of their childhood. And because of that sacrifice, that's why Dr. Foote felt so completely indebted to his brother. That's probably why he carried so much guilt. Ziba never got to enjoy any of the successes that Winthrop had. Ziba gave Winthrop all of what he had earned in life. Dr. Foote tried to give half of it right back, for eternity. On the opposite side of the monument, Dr. Foote reaches out to this day with one more line. And so farewell, my dear good friends, and farewell, world, to thee. I part with some in love, with all in peace and charity. In the decades after he died, people would visit that tomb and consider the legend of the man who built a town and an entire limestone industry. A fellow friend of Dr. Foote wrote his obituary saying, his many noble deeds and virtues live in the memories of his friends, while his few follies be forgotten, as he was only mortal. Dr. Foote accomplished so much in 68 years, it is absolutely crazy. And Bedford probably wouldn't exist for him, and it definitely wouldn't exist if the limestone industry had not been known the world over. So you really got to ask yourself, especially people from around here, would Lawrence County become more than small lawless villages scattered throughout the countryside? What I can say with 100% certainty is Lawrence County, Bedford in general, wouldn't have become what it is today without Dr. Foote being involved. It especially wouldn't have become anything if the limestone industry hadn't gotten involved. He rode in unlike any other man before him, and in my opinion, no other man has rode into this county like him since. If you've learned something today, like I've learned over the past few days, and that's just like the history of, that's local history. So people outside, if you think the story's cool, great, give me a follow. That'd be dope. Share it. All the local people, you probably learned something today, because I know I did. This is Jeremy. This has been Not in the Book. I want you guys to do me a favor with all of this crazy stuff that's going on in the world today. Go to a library about your county's history. Check it out. There's a lot of useful stuff. A lot of cool things that a lot of people really don't realize about their area. That being said, I'm Jeremy. Hope you enjoyed it.